Economists had these incredibly powerful models they use to understand the job market, right? But what if the very tools they're using are actually giving them a flawed picture of reality? What happens when the models themselves get it wrong? Well, that's what we're going to dive into.
I want you to just keep this question in the back of your mind as we go. What if the standard way we look at the economy is kind of like trying to see the details in a really blurry, low-resolution photo? You can kind of make out the general shape of things, but you miss all the critical, sharp details that tell the real story. So, to really get to the bottom of this, we first have to talk about the main framework economists use. For decades, there's been one model that's been the bedrock for pretty much all research on the labor market. It's called the Diamond-Mortensen-Pissarides model, or, DMP for short, and this isn't just some obscure theory. We're talking about a Nobel Prize-winning framework. It is the absolute gold standard in the field. Its whole purpose is to explain how all the hiring and the firing and wage negotiations end up creating the level of unemployment we see out there in the real world.
Now, a model like this is insanely powerful, but it's also incredibly complex. So to actually get any answers out of it, economists need a toolkit to make the whole thing manageable. And that, right there, brings us to the standard method they've been using for years.
I mean, think about it for a second. You're trying to model the interactions of millions of workers in millions of firms who are all making decisions based on what they think is going to happen in the future. The math gets wild really fast. So simplifying isn't just a choice. It's something you pretty much have to do to make the model solvable at all.
And the most common way they simplify is a technique called log linearization. So here's the best way to think about it. It takes the super complex, curvy, up and down reality of the economy, and it basically just approximates it with a simple, straight line. It kind of assumes everything just chugs along in a narrow band around the average. Now, this method is fast, but it's our blurry photo. It completely misses the sharp details of a sudden economic boom or, way more importantly, a deep crisis.
And this is where the trouble really starts. Using that blurry lens doesn't just simplify the picture, it fundamentally distorts it. It actually changes the conclusions we draw about how the economy works. Because this method just smooths everything out, it has this built-in bias, where it understates how volatile things really are. It makes the job market's booms and busts look so much smaller and gentler than they actually are. The model literally cannot see the scary, sharp spikes and the rapid climbs that define the real economy. But what if we didn't have to settle for that blurry photo? What if there was a better tool? Well, this is where a more advanced technique comes into play, and it gives us a chance to see the economy in stunning high definition. It's a simple question, right? But the answer? Well, it changes absolutely everything. When we upgrade our toolkit, what new details pop out? What parts of the picture that were all fuzzy before suddenly just snap into focus? So, our high-definition lens is called the projection method. Now, instead of just guessing around the average, this technique solves the model across its entire range of possibilities. It's built to handle the messy, nonlinear, complex dynamics of the real world. We're essentially upgrading from a grainy, blurry snapshot to a full 4K picture, one that captures all the intense contrast between the really good times and the really bad ones.
So let's put them side by side. On the left, you've got the old way, log linearization. It's simple, it's fast, but it totally fails when things get extreme. On the right, you have the new way, the projection method. Okay, it's more complex, it's more intensive for sure, but it delivers the full, accurate picture. And when you're trying to make policy to fight a crisis, that kind of accuracy isn't just nice to have, it's everything.
Okay, so we've switched from a blurry lens to a 4K camera. What's the payoff? What does this new, clearer picture of the job market actually show us? Let me tell you, the results are pretty dramatic. Just take a look at this. This chart shows the volatility of unemployment predicted by both methods. The standard, blurry method gives you a volatility of 0.133, but the accurate method, it shows a volatility of 0.257. That's not a small difference, that is nearly double. The economy is so much more turbulent than the old tool ever led us to believe.
General volatility is one thing, but where the choice of your tool really matters, where it becomes critical, is in understanding recessions. And this is where that old, low-resolution view just completely falls apart. And this table, honestly, this is just staggering. Researchers hit the model with a negative shock, like the start of a recession, to see how unemployment would react. The standard method? It predicts a tiny spike of just 0.33 percentage points. But the accurate method shows the spike is actually 1.35%. The old tool was understating the damage of a recession by a factor of 4. Just let that sink in.
So why? Why is there such a massive difference? This quote from the research really gets to the heart of it. In bad times, the job market gets super congested. All of a sudden, you have this huge number of unemployed people all fighting for a tiny little pool of job openings. It creates this massive bottleneck, and unemployment doesn't just rise slowly, it spikes, and it spikes violently.
And what all of this reveals is a fundamental truth about the economy. It is not symmetric. It falls off a cliff into a recession much faster and much harder than the slow, gradual way it climbs back out. This is a core feature of the job market that those simple, straight-line tools are completely blind to.
Look, this isn't just some abstract academic debate about math. The tools that we choose to use to understand the economy have profound, real-world consequences for every single one of us.
So, let's just quickly recap the big takeaways here. First, and this is so important, the tools we use are not neutral. They actively shape what we see and the conclusions we come to. Second, the economy is messy, it's asymmetric, it doesn't behave like a nice simple straight line, especially during a crisis. And finally, if we want to create policies that can actually fight recessions effectively, we absolutely need models that can see the world in high definition, warts and all.
And all of this leaves us with one last, really important question. We just saw how a seemingly tiny choice of a mathematical technique can completely change our understanding of something as huge as the labor market. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other blurry lenses are we looking through? What other parts of our economic and social world do we urgently need to see in sharper focus?